Welcome back once again to the Imaginary Gallery. It is TJ, your host. This is Narcissist Trash Talk. Tonight's discussion will be involving a few pieces of the narcissistic monster intertwined together to present a Narcissism 101 type lesson involving entitlement, grandiosity, and vindictiveness, which are very common traits intertwined within these monsters. First off, the sense of entitlement. What does that mean? The sense of entitlement would mean dealing with the covert personality cluster B monster disorder. When you meet somebody new, it's very rare that they're going to present this sense of entitlement to you. You have to stick around and notice at a later time, which usually is too late, and you're already strapped into their game, they feel that they deserve whatever it is they want, even if they haven't had to work for it, even if they haven't had to suffer in order to earn it. They just simply think that they deserve it. But because they're covert, what they normally do is mirror your traits. They like to go after targets at any cost who are pretty much the complete opposite of what they are. Because they, underneath their mask, are an evil whore monster who wants to get whatever it can from any direction, and the ends will always justify the means, no matter who gets hurt in the process. If they want something and it's there, they're going to take it. It doesn't matter if it hurts another person. That's not their concern. If you're an empathetic person or an empath, you may have already expressed your feelings about situations you've been in before. But because they're covert, most of this is kept hidden. So you may have met the man or woman of your dreams, and you may just think you're giving out random small talk discussion information, but if you're with one of these monsters, they are listening for clues. And if you're releasing the types of clues that they're after, you may be asked for another date. You may be told this person's thinking about you day and night, because they target such people. On the contrary, if you displayed narcissistic traits after your first date with this monster and said, "Oh yeah, you were good tonight, but I've got 6 more tomorrow, I'll keep you in mind," they'd probably be gone, because it's like the same thing that they are, but it's just you're not wearing the mask, they are. But they love to go after those who are complete opposites, meaning people that have strong boundaries, people that have some sense of morality, and people who have some sense of honesty, because they are none of these things. They are like the complete opposite. But it gives them that thrill, that supply, that fuel. Let's say you are one of these empathetic people. You got a second date secured. Well, to this creature, that is like a victory, because in their mind they're thinking, this person is moral, this person is compassionate, this person's empathetic, and he or she wants to see me again. Bingo, I've made it. Oh, they think they need to congratulate themselves because their whole life is some kind of game. So if they've secured a second date with the empath, well, victory. Typically, your experience with such a person will not begin with you recognizing from day one that they feel entitled. No, in fact, many times they will start off actually dumbing themselves down, which makes it seem like whatever you say, they're going to go along with. They act like they feel just lucky to have gotten to have this evening with you, and you kind of get the idea this person is desperate. This person is a loser, it kind of feels like, and this is phony. They're doing this on purpose, so you feel a sense of superiority over them. For example, if they want to see you tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, you may say, whoa, it was fun to see you tonight, but I have other things going on. Maybe I can see you next week or something. If they have targeted you as the type they're after, they will immediately adapt. Oh, that's fine, that's fine. And then they'll say things like, oh, I realize you don't want to see me as much as I want to see you, so I'll leave it up to you. And they'll make you feel like you are in control. Little do you know, they're running the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain monster show that you don't see as of yet, and you think that you genuinely have the control here, which, if you're skeptical of such people, is perfect. It's an illusion. The grandiosity or the sense of entitlement, they don't really show up. In fact, they rarely do show up in like overt manner. You've gone to a restaurant that's busy and there's a long line, you won't usually hear, ah, we're more important than these people who have reservations. We're going to go to the front of the line. Well, you won't usually see that with these types of people. Eventually you may. At the beginning, they are on their best behavior, like the obnoxious brat who mommy takes to church on Sunday and says, do not act obnoxious for this Sunday school. And then the kid shapes up temporarily. Well, when you're with such a person, it's kind of like the same thing. They have shaped up and acted polite. Refrain from anything that would indicate what their true evil nature consists of. The grandiosity part of it, these creatures seem to think that they are several steps above everybody else. And it's very interesting to watch them. There's a various social agreement that, for example, you should do what you want that makes you happy as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else. Well, that's like a general golden rule type thing. Well, these monsters know all about that, but they don't follow it. However, in order to impress you, their dialogue will usually resemble someone who does believe such things. They're undercover. They're covert. They are a monster, and they're trying to appeal to somebody who's nothing like themselves. So they know the words to say. They know what the rules should be, and they act like they're following them. But the very fact that you are completely opposite and they're pursuing you is a demonstration of their sense of entitlement and their grandiosity, because they think that they deserve to have a date with you, even though they know very well that if you even had a tiny clue about what they were really like, you would not even look at them again. And it's that supply, the idea of tricking you, the idea of getting you reeled into their mess. Another thing about these people is they're all about appearances. So, for example, if you're the empath and you've gone on the date number 1 with this cluster B creature, and throughout the course of your conversation you mention, oh, I used to date this person, oh, he was so horrible, he lied about everything. Guess what? Lying is this creature's specialty, but for the sake of impressing you, you're likely to hear something like, oh, that's terrible, he lied, oh, I would never, if you were my girlfriend, I would never lie to you. Beware of always or never statements, because it's a red flag usually, and phony and not realistic, that anybody would always do something or never do something. Keep that in mind. They love to keep up the appearance. So if you've expressed in your interactions that honesty and loyalty are important to you, well, you will hear stories from the monster of, oh, well, I'm always loyal and I'm always honest. Well, that's great, but such things are not something one can prove by just claiming. Those are things that you usually pick up on over a long period of time, dealing with the same person over and over. But what they like to do is take what they've gotten from you, and they've told you, I'll always be honest, but guess what happened? Some kind of circumstance occurs, like you're told one night you didn't hear from him or her, and the next day, oh, I fell asleep. But then you're out the next day and somebody walks up to the creature and says, oh, that was so fun last night. I loved that party. Well, you're going to be like, huh? What party? Didn't you say you were sleeping with? When that kind of thing happens, typically the narcissistic monster will say, oh, that person's crazy. I don't know what they're talking about. I think they're on drugs or something. Or if you keep pushing, they'll usually insist that they have no idea why that person said that. They did not go to any party. Do the pity play type thing, like, wow, I can't believe after all the attention I've given you, you're going to think so lowly of me that this stranger would ruin what we, and you'll feel your empathetic guilt of, that is true, I shouldn't be so judgmental. And that's exactly why they want your kind, because it's taboo in many cases to directly accuse another person of lying to you. Even though you've got the evidence right there, then, though, with these monsters and their warped version of reality, you'll simply be told, that person I've never seen before in my life, I don't know where it came from and why it's saying that, and they'll say, if you want to believe that stranger instead of the love I have to give you, well, that's, and then of course by then you'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, okay, and that's exactly what they're after. Putty in their hands. So the appearance part is important, but there's no substance to it. So it'll tell you, it's telling you 100% truth, and then this type of event comes up that indicates something else happened. It will continue the appearance of, I don't know who that person is, I'm still telling you the truth. The other part of this is the vindictiveness, which I've related to cause and effect, which these monsters have no concept of. They are vindictive. They have a fantasy world they exist in. They completely take for granted the fact that usually in the interaction they're upset about is based on fraud. They have fraudulently insinuated themselves in someone's life, false pretenses. When the target of this potentially like catches on to something fishy, sees enough clues to indicate something isn't right, if such a person decides to withdraw or go no contact, these monsters, they actually feel like you have wronged them. Never mind that they've fraudulently brought you into their little twisted world and deceived you from the first moment you spoke. None of that even plays a part in their attitude or viewpoint, which for a regular non-cluster B monster, they could look in on this and think, what does that person expect? It was fraudulent, and this person caught on and fled? Good for her, but these people do not understand that. They think, and that's where the entitlement as well fits in, they feel entitled to have this person, even if they're faking the whole way through. And how dare that person question their motives and run away? Oh, and they think, I'm going to show her. And a regular person on the outside watching would be like, you're going to show her what? Accept it. You are a fraud, and she figured you out. But they don't see things that way. They feel entitled, that Who cares if they deceived her? She is not going to reject them. And that is one of the reasons why they tell you, when you realize you're with such a monster, no contact, because it's a sick, twisted game. I mean, look at that. He's fraudulent to her. She fell for it, but then later figured it out and then fled, and he thinks he's going to punish her? It's sickening. I did a video about it a long time ago. A man has seen a house that's got like a single woman inside of it. He decides he's going to rob that house or burglarize it, and he goes in and sneaks up on the lady, and keep in mind, he doesn't belong in this house. It's not his property, but he decides to grab her, knock her over, strangle her, whatever, and she is a taekwondo expert and flips around and like hits him. Well, then he becomes enraged and then tries to punish her further, and again, a regular person looking in on that would say, what kind of monster is that? That's not his house. He shouldn't be in there. But see, they don't have a moral code. They do not follow the regular moral rules, but they will pretend to. And you'll find it perplexing when you find one of these people who claims to share all these wonderful values, but then you discover that it murdered someone last week, and even though you've had discussions about how he does not believe in violence of any kind, but then he's murdered 3 people last week, and that's when you start the sickness, crazy-making, retarded type narratives of, oh, I don't believe in murder. I just murdered those people because of, and if you get in that situation, flee. And one final part of this plethora of items is something I read about recently called the compromise effect. Typically, if you meet this kind of a creature, if you are somebody that has boundaries, or you are someone who has been burned a few times, you may proceed with caution. There's something called the compromise effect. These types of people are like leeches. You give them one evening of your time, and all of a sudden, they're texting and calling every hour of the day and wanting to see you again and again and again and telling you how they missed you and how beautiful and hot you are and blah, blah, blah. Picture you have a new house, and in the basement there is a faucet. Well, if you hook the faucet up, it simply flows non-stop, non-stop. Well, in most people's lives, they don't need a non-stop source of water. They will need it for their shower. They may need some water for their cooking. They may need it for a bath later, but they don't want non-stop water, water, water. Well, the narcissistic person who's targeted you will be like that flowing faucet, just non-stop. Like, I want to see you today, I want to see you tomorrow, and I want to see you the next day, and you're like, nah, stop. Well, it's like you're taking a tool and a wrench and twisting it, because sure, you might want to see it once today, but maybe not for a few more days, so you will feel the need to use your tool. If it was up to the monster, that water would flow on and on and on. With this thing called the compromise effect, we already know you've been targeted because of your empathy, because of your emotional abilities. What's typical, which can get you into trouble, is the compromise effect, which basically is like that faucet trying to flow non-stop for 12 hours of the day, and you, being a friendly, empathetic person, may say, okay, well,
12 hours a day is too much, but I'll meet you halfway. I'll give you 6.
That's common, and I've fallen into that mess before, because you know that if it's up to them, they'll just constantly flow. You are taking the lead, believing you have control by saying, okay, well, I know you want the whole 12 hours, but I'll give you 6. Well, that gives these creatures hope, because they think, okay, it's just like a child. The child who begs mommy and daddy for whatever it wants. Mommy, daddy, I want a horse, I want a horse. And mommy and daddy not going to give them a horse, that they may say,
Okay, well, we can't give you a horse, but instead of having to eat your vegetables today, we'll give you some candy bars of chocolate.
And they're compromising. Well, that gives the child, which is what you're dealing with when it's one of these cluster B monsters anyway, a child that's just in an adult body, that gives them hope to think, ooh, I can try harder next time and get maybe 8 hours instead of 6, and then maybe 10 hours instead of whatever, and so on. Well, that's what these people do. And of course, they won't tell you any of this, but you have to learn to recognize it and see it and realize it only gets worse.
I never did mind about the little things.
I never did mind about the little things. Say it! Say it!
Really? You really want to know what happens? I was spending a lot of time in class because I was going to school to further my education. My boyfriend was paranoid, kind of like you, and thought I had something going on with the teacher. Of course I didn't, but he found the no-tell-motel receipt that somehow ended in my pocket that weekend I had to go away for school. And he put 2 and 2 together and found out that my teacher and I shared the same room in the honeymoon suite at the no-tell-motel.
He was totally unfounded for even making such an accusation. The honeymoon suite is all that they had available, and I slept on the couch. So I don't see what the problem is. Some people can be so paranoid. Oh.
So what if you found a bill that came for an abortion procedure? It was obviously a mistake. I haven't done anything with that teacher, so it's a mistake. I don't know how they got my name. Maybe there's another Sandy Hooker in their listing. Maybe it's some mistake, maybe an incompetent clerk, like you were when you first started at your job. Give me a break. I am not pregnant. I did not have an abortion. What is wrong with you? You know what, you're paranoid.
So, just to set the record straight, the only person that I have any feelings for is me, which means I get what I want at whatever cost.
I don't care
Who gets hurt? I get what I want because I am the narcopath and you're not. Don't forget it.
Say it! Say it!